Alright, this will be the solution to the Trig Scavenger Hunt worksheet. I've already marked all the angles that we care about, so we can just label our sides, set up the trig equation, and solve. Start off this first one. This is method number, let's see, 1 on our 3 ways to solve trig equations. So there's 3 different types of things you can solve for. You can solve for the top side, the bottom side, or the angle itself. So when it's like this and you have the number on the bottom, multiply by whatever that number is on both sides and then solve. When we go to Desmos, make sure that you are in degree mode. Always have to remember that. So that was going to be 8 times the sine of 27 degrees. And that gives us 3.632. It looks like they have everything rounded to the tenth, so I'm actually going to round that to the 10th spot, so that's going to be 3.6. Number 2, here's my angle. Again, you can always label the hypotenuse. It's opposite the 90 degrees. It's that diagonal. And what we said before is that if you can't really necessarily tell the diagonal, that you can rotate your paper to make sure that you can clearly tell. So like if I rotate this right now, I can kind of clearly see, yes, here is my diagonal. So opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. That mark touches the hypotenuse but also touches the adjacent side. So the adjacent side is the side that the angle touches. Left over then is across from the angle is our opposite side. Because I want to relate, so if I'm thinking SOHCAHTOA, that's a mnemonic to remember which relationship to use, the sine, the cosine, or the tangent function. Because I want the O and the A to be involved, the opposite side because it has an x there, the adjacent side because it has 55, the O and the A is going to be tangent, so I'm going to set this up as tangent of my angle, 22 degrees, is going to be equal to the opposite side over the adjacent. Okay. We can solve that. I'll solve that one in a second. Number 3, again, opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. The side touches it, the angle, so that's adjacent. This is opposite. And opposite and adjacent are the sides I care about again. So that's again going to be a tangent of 65 equals opposite over adjacent. This one down here, number 4, I care about the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. This time I don't care about the opposite side. So the one I care about, hypotenuse, because it has the number there, 30, and I care about the adjacent because it has your x, what you're trying to solve for. So the function that has the a and the h in it, so SOHCAHTOA, so cosine of 54 degrees, it's going to equal to the adjacent side, so that x over the hypotenuse, 30. And you can see these are all being set up in the same way, which the way to solve these is to multiply by whatever the bottom number is on both sides. Then number 5, I've got my hypotenuse, the adjacent, and the opposite. I care about the opposite and the hypotenuse. That's going to be my sine function. So sine of x. So this time I'm actually going to have to figure out what the degree measure is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And this last one, this first section, is going to be, here's your hypotenuse, your adjacent side, and the opposite side. I care about the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so I'm going to use cosine. Cosine of my angle x, looks sloppy. Cosine of x is going to equal to the SOHCAH, so adjacent over hypotenuse. So whatever letter comes first, that goes on top, and then the last one goes on bottom. Alright, so let's solve some of these out. Multiply by 55 on both sides. Number 2 is x going to be equals to 55 times the tangent of 22 degrees. This one, number 3, is x is going to equal 9 times the tangent of 65. tangent of 65. This one, x is going to equal 30 times the cosine of 54. And when you're ever solving for an angle, that's a different way we have to solve. So like in these ones, you were trying to solve for the side on top. This one, you're trying to find in number 5 and number 6, you're trying to solve for the angle. Whenever you're trying to solve for the angle, you have to do the inverse function on both sides. Doing the inverse will cancel out sine, and so you're left with x is equal to the inverse sine of 9/16. And x equals the inverse cosine of 3.8 over 5.1. Alright, so I'm going to just do these on the TI-83 to the side, making sure I'm in degree mode. So 55 times the tangent of 22 is 22.2. Nine times the tangent of 65 is 19.3. 30 times the cosine of 54 is 17.6. An inverse sine of 9/16 is 34.2 degrees. An inverse cosine of 3.8 over 5.1 is 41.8 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to look to see if any of these answers are up here, and I'll shade these a particular color. I choose this one. So we have 3.6, see that? Shade that. 22.2, 22.2 right here. Number 3, 19.3, right here. 17.6 right here. 34.2 right here. And 41.8 right here. So those squares should have the same color. Moving on to the bottom here. To get rid of the 75 in the bottom, multiply by 75 on both sides. That cancels. Let's see, 75 times the tangent of 18 gets us 24.4 if we round. On these ones, opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. I'm going to go ahead and label all the hypotenuses. Opposite the 90, opposite the 90, opposite the 90, opposite the 90, and opposite the 90. Okay, this last one, it can be a little bit tricky sometimes to figure it out, but again, just rotate until you can sort of clearly see that, oh, okay, that is my diagonal right there. Right. On this one, number 8, here's my angle, so this is the adjacent, this is the opposite. Here's my angle, so that's the adjacent, this is the opposite. There's my angle, so that's the adjacent, this is the opposite. There's my angle, so this is the adjacent, and this is the opposite. Here's my angle, so adjacent and opposite. Angle, so adjacent, and then opposite. Okay. So if I'm thinking SOHCAHTOA, in number 8, I care about the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so that means I use cosine. Cosine of x equals adjacent, so 8 over the hypotenuse, 12. Number 9, I care about the adjacent and the opposite, so I'm going to use tangent because that includes the opposite and the adjacent. So tangent of x equals opposite TOA over the adjacent 22. Number 10, I care about the opposite and the hypotenuse, so I'm going to use sine. Sine of 35 equals so opposite over the hypotenuse. Number 13, adjacent and opposite. So adjacent and opposite, that's going to be another tangent, so the TOA. So tangent of 60 equals opposite 100 over adjacent. Care about the opposite and hypotenuse, so that's going to be sine. Sine of 72 equals so opposite over hypotenuse. And then you care about the hypotenuse and the opposite, so that's again going to be sine. So katoa, so sine of x equals so opposite 23 over 25. Right. So let's see, we had 24.4 for that one. We have number 8, I need to do the inverse cosine of both sides. So inverse cosine of 8 divided by 12 gets you 48.2 if you round. Number 10, I have to multiply by 12 on both sides. So 12 times the sine of 35 degrees gets you 6.9 if you round it. I have to solve for the angle in number 9, so I'm going to use the inverse tangent of 11 over 22. Gets me 26.6 if I round. Number 11, I have to use the inverse sine to get to that angle. So inverse sine of 23 over 25. That must have been a 66.9 degree angle. That was degree. Number 12, I need to multiply by 4 on both sides, so 4 times the sine of 72 gets me 3.8. And this last one, we haven't had to do one of these yet, but I'm going to, the shortcut is to flip the x and the tangent of 60. So your answer is going to be x equals 100 divided by the tangent of 60 degrees. We said we'll multiply by both sides on x, then divide by the tangent of 60 to solve it if you're solving it longhand. But the shortcut is just to flip these two items. So your x would be equal to 100 divided by the tangent of 60. So 100 divided by tangent of 60 gets you 57.7. Okay. So let's go back on our coloring spree. I'll do green. So we had 24.4 and 48.2. 24.4, I see 48.2. I see 24.4. Then 26.6 and 6.9, 26.6, here's 6.9, 26.6, let's see, 11, 66.9, and then 3.8, 66.9, don't see a 3.8, and then 57.7, 57.7 down here. Okay. Last color. So this one again, I'll kind of show it. This is how we would solve number 13 15 from the previous one. Multiply by y on both sides. So I get y times the cosine of 5 degrees equals 92. And then you would divide by cosine of 5 degrees. So that becomes y equals 92 divided by cosine of 5. The shortcut just being to realize that if you flip the y in the cosine of 5 degrees, that cross multiplication, you can kind of just go ahead and do that, flip it, and get your answer. So 92 divided by cosine of 5 degrees is that one. Opposite the 90 is my hypotenuse. This is the adjacent. This is the opposite. Opposite the 90 is hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. The hypotenuse. The hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse. So here's my angle. There's hypotenuse, so this is adjacent, this is opposite. Here's my angle, so there's adjacent, this is opposite. Here's my angle, so this is the adjacent, this is the opposite. Angle, so there's your hypotenuse, this is the adjacent, and then opposite. And then angle, adjacent, and opposite. Okay, so let's set these up and finish this off. In number 15, I care about the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. So ka has the a and the h in it. So cosine of x equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Number 16, I care about the hypotenuse and the adjacent. So ka again has the a and the h in it. So cosine of x equals the adjacent ka over the hypotenuse. Number 17, I care about the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so that's going to be, again, cosine. Lots of cosines. Adjacent over hypotenuse. 19, I care about the opposite and the hypotenuse, that's going to be sine. Sine of 50 equals so opposite over hypotenuse. 18, I care about the adjacent and the opposite. It's going to be tangent. So tan of x equals opposite over adjacent, TOA. So opposite over adjacent. And the last one, number 20, I care about the hypotenuse and the opposite. So that's going to be sine. So sine of 36 equals so opposite over the hypotenuse. Right. So 92 divided by the cosine of 5. Should get 92.4. I'm trying to solve for x in number 15, so I need to do the inverse cosine on both sides. So inverse cosine of 61.2 divided by 100 gets you 52.3 degrees if you round. Sine of 50 equals 50 over x. To get to that x in the bottom, I'm going to flip both of these. So I'm going to end up doing 50 divided by the sine of 50, which gets me 65.3 if I round. On this one, again, same idea. I'm going to flip these two, so I'm going to do x equals 18 divided by the sine of 36, which gets me 30.6. Solving for the angle, so I'm going to do inverse tangent, 60 divided by 47, and I get 51.9. Number 16, inverse cosine of 90 over 263. I get 70 degrees if I round. And this last one, multiply by 70 on both sides, so 70 times the cosine of 51 gets you 44.1 if you round. I think that was all of them. Alright, so let's go with the nice pastel blue. Pastel? Who knows? 92.4 and 57.7. 92.4 right here. And see that other one. 70 and 44.1. 70, 44.1. 52.3 and 65.3. So 52 and 65, 52.3, 65.3. Then 30.6 and 51.9. 30.6 and 51.9. Leaving 38 as the only one not colored in. Alright, so that is the Trig Scavenger Hunt.